So, I've been working a lot of places where I have a lot of downtime. Um, and I want to get back in the rhythm of making content for you guys. I want to get back in the rhythm of doing my thing. And it's been frustrating to me because I've kind of been stuck at a lot of these spots where I haven't had much to do. So I figured maybe I could find a way to mix business with pleasure and at least maybe even just practice being in front of a camera, practice talking to people, to get back into the rhythm of making content because I've fallen off so much. I've been so busy with IRL and stuff that I haven't had. Um, it's something I can fall back into, but I need to put myself back in the rhythm of making content. So anyway, this is just practice for me. I want to engage with you guys. I want to give you something um, to listen to and to watch. I have so many deep, profound insights in my head, and I need to get them out. So if you guys have any questions, you guys want me to talk about something, please let me know. Until then, I've been poring over the Yoga Vasishtha lately, so I wanted to go over that with you guys. High five. This is going to be on creation. So this is really good. The Yoga Vasishtha is really good. It's hard to describe, but okay. So like the basic foundational dharma of the Indian tradition was universal and it was accepted by Hindus and Buddhists. The Buddhists just kind of took it and kind of reformed it and had a few criticisms of the way that the Hindus saw the Dharma, but the way that the universe operates was accepted by the Indians and by the Hindus and the Buddhists. So I want to get more into that core foundational structure of how the ancient Indians saw the universe. And it was a way in which you have a spiritual origin, but a mental creation. So they understood, just like the ancient Greeks, that you have a mental universe. And this is at the core of Western and Eastern occultism and esotericism, that the universe is mental. And we're starting to see this in even in modern Western understanding. We're starting to get that what's underneath forms and matter is information. So we're going to continue to find more and more that the mind plays a central role in the universe, and even and so from a Vedic ontological system, at the origin of the universe, Brahma creates the universe with his mind. And so I don't want you to look at the creation of the universe as a kind of linear thing that happened a long time ago. I want you to look at it as a constantly creating, dissolving. People go through life cycles. They're created, right, by their parents. They live, they die, they are reabsorbed into Shiva, and that information gets generated again. So the universe is an ongoing creation. It's an ongoing evolution, and it happens at the level of mind. So what's going on in your mind is super important. Your sense of self, this entangled identity that you have, which is tied into your form when you're unenlightened, and which is liberated from self-referencing only based on the form when you are enlightened, is the prime mover of creation. So your sense of self is so important. It influences all your relationships. It's what drives you into creating different types of karmas and good and bad actions. So what I want to do is I want to uplift people with knowledge to understand themselves better so that they can make more enlightened choices and they can improve their karma, they can understand the Dharma and their unique Dharma, their unique duties, and become better human beings. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go into On Creation by the Yoga Vasisht. So before the text itself, we have an explanation of Akasha, which means space, or the author here says, or it could mean dimensionality. I don't know really the root of Akash. Akash sometimes is Akash or Akasha. Whether to say that it's okay to refer to it as dimension, but it's usually translated as space. So we'll go with space. So three important words. We have a little forward here before we get into the text, with a quote from Sri Ramana Maharshi. Three important words occur in the text, which are Chidakasha, Chitakasha, and Bhutakasha. Literally, Akasha means space, and hence Chitakasha means consciousness space. Chitakasha means mind space, and Bhutakasha means the element space. These three concepts are thus beautifully explained by Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi. It is said that Chidakasha itself is Atma Swarupa, the image of Atma. It means the image of yourself, self. And that we can view it only with the help of the mind. How can we see it if the mind has subsided? Someone asked. Bhagwan said, if the sky is taken as an illustration, it must be stated to be of three varieties: Chidakasha, Chitakasha, and Bhutakasha. The natural state is called Chidakasha. The I feeling that is born from Chidakasha is Chitakasha. And that Chitakasha expands and takes the shape of all the bhutas, which means the elements. This is the Bhutakasha. Hello, Panya. Hey. When the Chitakasha, which is consciousness of the self, I, does not see the Chidakasha, but sees the Bhutakasha, it is said to be Mano Akasha. And when it leaves Mano Akasha and sees Chidakasha, it is said to be Chinmaya, pure consciousness. The subsiding of the mind means the idea of multiplicity of objects vanishes and the idea of oneness of objects appears. When that is achieved, everything appears natural. So we have a similar kind of conception in Tibetan Buddhism with Ati Yoga and Dzogchen, which is basically that when the senses are not overpowering the mind, when you're in a deep meditative state, the mind is absorbed into a primordial reality called Rigpa. So likewise, they're describing it here in the Hindu way of saying it is that you have three types of space, or three types of dimensionality. You have the Atma Swarupa, which is the spirit basically. You have the Chitta Akasha, which is the mind, and you have the Bhuta Akasha. Now we're going to talk about how that this spirit kind of animates into the mind and then takes form. So that's how that the universe is created. That's how that our lives work as well, as we understand, right? And when we meditate, we can kind of feel our mind disentangle from our form and kind of become absorbed in the spirit, right? So likewise, this above and below differentiation, although they're still interwoven and intertwined with one another. You have, Shiva, the consciousness, and Shakti manifesting as Prakriti, which is the animating germ of matter, essentially one. So that's the Indian idea of the cosmos, is that you have a kind of archetypal reality emerging out of the spirit, making contact with the mind, and evolving into multiplicity of forms, which then again dissolve back into the spirit. And so you have this kind of interwoven tapestry of creation and dissolution in which mental types and patterns take form and become different types of living beings, become different types of devas and hell beings and whatnot. So that's what I'm really interested in helping people to understand, because I feel that when you understand reality in this way, when you see that your sense of self is involved in this cosmic scheme of different types of being that result from different types of karmas, you can make better choices, and you kind of even that it kind of helps you to overcome the sense the kind of being trapped in your I-ness, when you can see that the sense of self is always a part of a big archetypal play going on that emerges out of relationships between things. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to just go read straight from the book here. I am from California, by the way, Pandya. I live in Florida right now, though. So Vashishta continued, I shall now declare to you the creation and its secret. For it is only as long as one invests the perceived object with reality that bondage lasts. Once that notion goes, with it goes bondage. Here in this creation, only that which is created grows, decays, and then goes either to heaven or to hell, and it gets liberated. During the cosmic dissolution, the entire objective creation is resolved into the infinite being, which is variously designated as Atma, Brahma, Truth, etc., by the wise to facilitate communication and dialogue. This same infinite self conceives within itself the duality of oneself and the other. Thence mind arises as a wave arises when the surface of the calm ocean is disturbed. But please bear in mind that just as a bracelet of gold is but gold, and though gold exists without being a bracelet, bracelet does not exist without gold or other metal. So it's a common metaphor used in Vedanta, that the although the different forms that we see are definitely different, they are different forms. They're made essentially out of the same material, the gold, just like gold bracelets and gold bangles and gold earrings and gold chains are all made out of gold. Likewise, the forms are all made out of spirit. We all have the same soul essence. The qualities and the nature of the created and the potentiality of creation are inherent in the creator. So just like I said earlier, the prakriti, the forms that we see, the matter is inherent within the soul, within the Shiva. The mind is non-different from, has no existence independent of the infinite self. Even as the mirage appears to be a very real river of water, this creation appears to be entirely real. And as long as one clings to the notion of the reality of you and I, there's no liberation. Not by merely and verbally denying such a notion of existence is it obliterated. On the contrary, such denial itself becomes a further distraction. Rama, if the creation is in fact real, then there is no possibility of its cessation, for it is an immutable law that the unreal has no real existence and the real does not cease to be. Austerity, meditation, and other such practices can therefore not cause its cessation nor enlightenment. As long as the notion of the creation lasts, even though contemplation, As long as the notion of creation lasts, even the contemplation, samadhi, in which there is no movement of thought, nirvikalpa, is not possible. Even if it were possible, the moment one returns from such contemplation, the creation with its sorrow arises in the mind. Movement of thought creates the notion of created objects. Even as the essence exists in all things, as oil exists in the it's the smaller one, yeah, smaller. Movement of thought creates the notion of created objects. Even as the essence exists in all things, as oil exists in sesame seeds, as aroma exists in flowers, the faculty of objective perception exists in the perceiver. Even as the dream objects are experienced only by the dreamer, the objects of perception are experienced by the perceiver. Just as from a seed the sprout arises in due time, this potentiality becomes manifest as the notion of creation. So, important thing I feel like that Buddhism does very well is to impart in yourself the understanding that everything takes place in your mind. Yeah, you have these tangible objects and they appear to exist outside of you, but really it's just an elaborate play to give a sense of permanence to what's perceived in the mind. Reality is just like a dream. I say sometimes reality is like a slowed down dream, but it's still only experienced in the mind. You can't get at reality outside of your mind. Vashishta continued, there is a holy man named Akasaja, literally born of space. He is in constant meditation and has the welfare of all at heart. He had lived for a long time when death desired to devour him. When death approached him, it had to struggle with the fierce fire that protected the holy man. Even after fending this off, death was unable to touch him. Bewildered by this extraordinary and unprecedented event, death went to Lord Yama, who presides over the destinies of mortals, and questioned him. Pray, Lord, tell me why it is that I am unable to grasp him. Yama answered, in fact, O death, you do not really kill anyone. Death is really caused by one's own karma, the fruition of one's actions. Hence, discover this man's fatal karma. Even as no one can find the whereabouts of a barren woman's son, death could not discover the holy man's karma anywhere in the world. He reported this to Yama. Yama said, O death, this holy man Akasaja was truly born of space, and he has no karma at all. He is as pure as space. Hence he has incurred no karma with which you can grasp him or devour him. Even as a barren woman's son, this holy man is not born. He had no previous birth karma either, and therefore he has no mind. Hence, he has not even committed a mental action which could bring him within your reach. He is nothing but a mass of intelligence. He appears to be a living being only in our eyes. In him, there does not exist any such notion that can give rise to karma. Consciousness is reflected in consciousness, and the reflection assumes independence. It is a false assumption, not a real existence, and this holy man knows the truth. Even as liquidity is naturally present in water and emptiness in space, this holy man lives in the Supreme Spirit. So, enlightenment is a reverse of the creation, right? The elements are reabsorbed inwardly through the channels into the spirit, and then your mind is no longer creating karma. Your mind is resting internally within the spirit. His is a causeless manifestation, and hence he is known as self-created. He who entertains the foolish notion that I am this body made up of earth is entangled in matter, and you can overpower him. Since this holy man has no such notion, and hence he is truly bodiless, he is beyond your reach. This holy man has never been born. He is pure consciousness that has undergone no change. In the infinite being, at the beginning of an epoch, there arises a vibration on account of latent ignorance. And this manifests as diverse beings as if in a cosmic dream. Uninvolved in this holy man remains pure consciousness. So basically, at the end of the cosmic time, at the end of the universe, everything is absorbed back into Parashiva. Just like at the end of the day, our consciousness is absorbed back into Parashiva, and we go to sleep and we dream. So likewise, at the end of the universe, everything is absorbed back into Parashiva, and because there's a little latent impression of tamas, of tamaguna, Parashiva becomes diluted again. And out of that first subject-object split, all of the multiplicity of creation arises and generates again. Vashishta said, "In the Creator there is neither a seer nor an object of perception, yet he is known as self-created. He shines in cosmic consciousness as a painting in the mind of an artist." Vashishta continued, "In the Creator there is no memory of the past, since he had no previous karma. He does not even have a physical body. The unborn is of a spiritual substance. Mortal beings have two bodies, as it were, one physical and the other spiritual, but the unborn Creator only has the spiritual, since the cause that gives rise to the physical does not exist in him. He was not created, but he is the Creator of all beings. Surely the created, like a bracelet, is of the same substance as that of which it was created, gold. The Creator's thought being the cause of this manifold creation, and the Creator himself having no physical body, the creation too is truly of the nature of thought, without materiality. A throbbing arose in the Creator whose thought had spread out as the universe. This throb brought into being the subtle bodies made of intelligence of all beings. Made of only thought, all these beings only appeared to be, though they felt that the appearance was real. However, this appearance thus imagined to be real produced results, realistic results or consequences, even as sexual enjoyment in a dream does. Similarly, even the Creator, the holy man of the story, though he has no body, appears to have a body. So a throbbing rose in the Creator whose thought had spread out as the universe. This throb brought into being the subtle body made of intelligence of all beings. Made only of thought, all these beings only appeared to be, though they felt that the appearance was real. However, this appearance thus imagined to be real produced realistic results or consequences, even as sexual enjoyment in a dream does. Similarly, even the Creator, the holy man of the story, though he has no body, appears to have a body. So, Satyam Gupta asked me a good question. The similarities and differences between Advaitins and Buddhists. I'll gladly answer your question if you're still around when I'm done reading this in a little bit. Then I'll give my interpretation or my take on that. The Creator also has a dual. The Creator also is of a dual nature: consciousness and thought. Consciousness is pure. Thought is subject to confusion. Hence, he appears to come into being, arise, though he does not so arise. He is the intelligence that supports the whole universe, and every thought that arises in intelligence gives rise to form. Though all these forms are of the nature of pure intelligence, on account of self-forgetfulness of this, and of the thought of physical forms, they freeze into the physical forms, even as goblins, though formless, are seen to have forms on account of the perceiver's delusion. So though all these forms are of the nature of pure intelligence, on account of self-forgetfulness of this and of the thought of physical forms, they freeze into the physical forms. Even as goblins, though formless, are seen to have forms on account of the perceiver's delusion. The Creator, however, is not subject to such delusion. Hence, he is always of a spiritual nature, not materialistic. The Creator is spiritual, and even so, his creation too is in reality spiritual in essence. This creation is causeless. Hence, it is essentially spiritual, even as the Supreme Being, Brahman, is. The materiality of the creation is like a castle in the air, an illusory projection of one's own mind, imaginary. So that's what I want to get at, is that our forms, our being, is a projection of our mind. And so our mind is not without qualities. Actually, the form is a representation of the qualities of our consciousness. We have, we have intellect, our brains, right? And we have intuition, our hearts, and we have instinct, our bellies, right? So when you understand the archetypal pattern of your consciousness, of your mind, and through the symbolic representation of your form, you'll be in harmony with yourself. All right. The Creator is the mind. Mind, or pure intelligence, is his body. Thought is inherent in the mind. The object of perception is inherent in the perceiver. Who has ever discovered a distinction between the two? Valmiki said, "At this stage, the sun sped towards the western hills, as if eager to meditate upon the sage's words and to illumine other parts of the earth. The assembly dispersed for prayers. The next morning, all the members of the court had reassembled as before. Rama asked, 'O holy sage, pray tell me what the mind really is.' Vashishta replied, 'Even as empty, inert nothingness is known as space, mind is empty nothingness. Whether the mind is real or unreal is that which is apprehended in objects of perception.' Whether the mind is real or unreal, it is that which is apprehended in objects of perception." So, if you think about it, really, the objects of the perception, they are mental, they are the mind. Before you were born, you had a specific karma in your past life which propelled you to take the form which matched your mental temperament, right? So, likewise, a human being, if a human being is demonic, they take a form in their next life which matches their mind, right? So like it said here, the objects of perception are the mind. It's all the mind. Whether the mind is real or unreal, it is that which is apprehended in objects of perception. Rama, thought is mind. There's no distinction between the two. And this is something that I've felt super, super intensely in the last couple years that I want to try to put into a systemic approach of spirituality, is how that objects influence your mind. Like just environments, right? Like being in a certain environment, it changes the landscape of your mind, right? It's almost like that what you perceive is like this field, and what's going on internally, you're creating all of these perceptions internally, and you kind of organize them into patterns which you can understand, right? And this is where we get archetypes. So the understanding of the pure nature of archetypes in the highest way that these archetypes work, if you can embody those things, when you become that object for others that influences their mind, you can embody those highest archetypes for them, then you're really living skillfully. Rama, thought is mind. There is no distinction between the two. The self is clothed in the spiritual body is known as mind. The self that is clothed in the spiritual body is known as mind. It is that which brings the material or physical body into existence. Ignorance, samsara, repetitive history, mind stuff, bondage, impurity, darkness, and inertia are all synonyms. Experience alone is the mind, and is none other than the perceived. The entire universe is forever non-different from the consciousness that dwells in every atom, even as an ornament is non-different from gold. Just as an ornament potentially exists in gold, the object exists in the subject. But when this notion of the object is firmly rejected and removed from the subject, then consciousness alone exists without even an apparent or potential objectivity. So like this is really, you have to understand this, right? So when the notion of the object is firmly rejected and removed from the subject, then consciousness alone exists without even an apparent or potential objectivity. When you fall asleep, you recreate yourself and your dreams. There's no body there. There's no frame of reference. You know, you're not in the world where other people see you and say, "Hey, yeah, I see that that's James there." When you're dreaming, your mind alone is recreating your form and yourself. It exists as a platonic image. Yourself is a platonic image that's like the gold being formed into a necklace, right? It doesn't matter that right now I'm awake and my form is very solid and tangible. Even every moment, my mind is building the jewelry of the image of myself, right? The Atma Swarup. And when it releases from the body and it's dreaming, that Atma Swarup is still there. When this is realized, evils like attraction and repulsion, love and hate cease in one's heart, as also the false notions of the world, you, I, even the tendency to objectify ceases. This is freedom. So what they're saying is that when you understand that form and mind are one, right? And they're mutable, they're changing. It depends on the mind state. You know, you see a person who's behaving demonically, you understand that that's their mental temperament based on delusion. You know, that person is deluded. They're under the spell of Maya. You take pity on them, right? You don't feel like that's a real demon there that you need to fight against, right? You understand that really consciousness is removed from all of this. You know, there's a verse in the Upanishads about how that you have the Paramatma and the Jivatma, right? The big self and the little self. The Jivatma, the little self, our consciousness, is always eating the fruits of the tree, the karmas, and that is under the spell of duality, is love and hate and fear and courage and all these things. But the Paramatma, the big bird at the end of the tree, is not affected by any of these things. So when you release yourself from the spell of believing in all of this is real, and you can absorb yourself back into that Paramatma through meditation and spiritual practice, you won't experience polarities. You know, even a yogi doesn't even feel hot or cold to that level that you can like even just waking consciousness, dreaming consciousness, or meditate. Like that Paramatma self is the same. It's stable in all of the conditions. Rama asked, "Holy Sir, if the object of perception is real, then it shall not cease to be. If it is unreal, then we do not see it as unreal, so how can we overcome this?" Vasishtha said, "Yet, O Rama, we see that there are holy ones who have overcome this. External objects like space, etc., and psychological factors like I, etc., exist only in name. In reality, neither the objective universe, nor the perceiving self, nor perception as such, nor void, nor inertness exist. It is only one cosmic consciousness, Chitta. In this, it is the mind that conjures up the diversity, diverse actions and experiences, the notion of bondage, and the desire for liberation." Right, and Damo Crazy said, "It's like we are waves of an ocean, though one we experience the separation." It actually said earlier here, I don't know if you were in the stream or not, that at the beginning of the creation, at the beginning of a cycle of a universe, spirit is one, like a pure, calm ocean, right? And then it's disturbed a little bit, and the waves of mind appear, and subject and object appear. And like you experience that in meditation as well. Like when you're in meditation, it's like the ripples, the mind is turbulent like the waves, and then once it calms, the subject and object disappears. It's like you're going backwards in creation, back to the origin, the beginning, before subject and object. Rama asked, "O holy sage, what is the source of this mind and how did it arise? Kindly enlighten me on these." Vasishtha replied, "After the cosmic dissolution and before the next epoch dawned, the entire objective universe was in a state of perfect equilibrium. There then existed the Supreme Lord, the eternal, unborn, self-effulgent, who is the all and who is omnipotent. He is beyond conception and description, though he is known by various names like Atma, etc. These are viewpoints and not the truth. He is, yet he is not realized by the world. He is within the body too, yet he is far. From him emerge countless divinities like Lord Vishnu, even as countless rays emerge from the sun, and from him emerge infinite worlds as ripples arise from the surface of the ocean." Now, if some of my Buddhist subscribers are hearing this and they're wondering like, "Hey James, did you go Hindu on us?" Like it says in the text here, these words and the way that they describe it are only to help us elucidate. They're not the absolute truth. The absolute truth, the absolutely unspeakable, and that's the point of Shunyata. Back to your question, Satyam Gupta. The point of Shunyata is that it's not possible to conceptualize, right? So a Nagarjuna or a Madhyamaka philosopher will dissect and deconstruct doctrines like this just by, and the point is that you can't conceptualize it, right? They'll say, okay, well, if it's an Atma and if it's unchanging, then how does it interact with mutable phenomena? It's impossible. So I mean, even in the Hindu text, they will grant that that's true, and they'll say things like this. It says, hey, we're just using this as a linguistic device to help point the finger at the moon. Amen. He is the cosmic intelligence into which countless objects of perception enter. He is the light in which the self and the world shine. He ordains the characteristic nature of every created thing. In him the worlds appear and disappear, even as a mirage appears and disappears repeatedly. His form, the world, vanishes, but his self is unchanging. He dwells in all. He is hidden and he overflows. By his mere presence, this apparently inert material world and its inhabitants are ever active. Because of his omnipresent, omnipotent omniscience, his very thoughts materialize. Now that's an amazing verse right there. Because of his omnipotent, omnipresent omniscience, his thoughts materialize. So Parashiva, the original self-awareness, thought this whole universe into existence. So we return, through enlightenment, you return to that undifferentiated Shiva, and you find stability in that, and hence you see your life in a completely different way. You're no longer under the spell of duality and under the dream-like control. And that's the most important thing that a yogi could get across, is that, hey, it's possible to do this. It's possible to withdraw the senses back into the primordial Lord, which is your essence. He expanded as us. He's us. The self is the self. It's one Atma, one spirit, one soul. only through the material senses it appears to be different. We're always trying to reconnect to that unity that we have in God, whether it's through love and sex or family or religion, whatever that it is. We're always seeking the unity back into Shiva. And it's beautiful how that symbolism is there through sex, right? Just like Atma and Prakriti produce the universe, a man and a woman produce life. And a man and a woman are constantly there. That's how we're trying to achieve that unity. Anyway, so a yogi withdraws the senses back into this omniscient, omnipresent potentiality, and then you have mastery over your life. This supreme self cannot be realized, O Rama, by means other than wisdom, not indeed by exerting oneself in religious practices. This self is neither far nor near. It is not inaccessible, nor is it in distant places. It is what in oneself appears to be the experience of bliss, and is therefore realized in oneself. Austerity or penance, charity, and the observances of religious vows do not lead to the realization of the Lord. Only to the company of holy men. Only the company of holy men and the study of true scriptures are helpful, as they dispel ignorance and delusion. Indeed, when one is convinced that this self alone is real, one goes beyond sorrow on the path of liberation. Austerity or penance is self-inflicted pain. Of what value is charity performed with wealth earned by deceiving others? Only they derive the fruits of such charity. Religious observances add to one's vanity. There is only one remedy for ignorance of the Lord, the firm and decisive renunciation of craving for sense pleasure. Rama asked, "Where does this Lord dwell, and how can I reach him?" Vashishta replied, "He who has been described as the Lord is not very far. He is the intelligence dwelling in the body. He is the universe. Though the universe is not he is pure intelligence." Rama remarked, "Even a little boy says that the Lord is intelligence. What need is there for special instruction regarding this?" Vashishta replied, One who knows that pure intelligence is the objective universe knows nothing. One who knows that pure intelligence is the objective universe knows nothing. Sentient is the universe, and sentient is the soul, jiva. The sentient creates the knowable and gets involved in sorrow. When there is cessation of the knowable and the flow of attention is towards that which is not knowable, pure intelligence, then there is fulfillment and one goes beyond sorrow. Without the cessation of the knowable, one's attention cannot be fully turned away from the knowable. Mere awareness of the involvement of the jiva in this samsara is of no use. But if the Supreme Lord is known, this sorrow comes to an end. So right here is the Buddhist doctrine right here. When there is cessation of the knowable and the flow of attention is towards that which is not knowable, pure intelligence, then there is fulfillment and one goes beyond sorrow. So when there is cessation of focus on the knowable, cessation of the knowable, right? The doctrine of shunyata is meant, and this is what it did to me. It's meant to drill all of this conceptual thinking out of your head. So by studying and reflecting on the shunyata scriptures, like of Nagarjuna especially, you realize through logical inconsistencies, which is a very skillful way for somebody with intelligence to get to a state of beyond knowable objects, as it's describing here. I'll give you an example, right? And it's really simple too. Like the Madhyamaka Buddhism, when you understand what they're trying to say, is super simple. It's super simple. You have a subject and an object, right? And we insist that the subject and object are different. This is just a conceptualization. It's not real. There's not a real difference between the subject and object. Because if the subject and object can't touch, then how does the subject become aware of the object, right? So our mind insists in this differentiation of knowable things because it has to understand it. You know, and I think it's very interesting that when a baby is born, right, a baby has to be taught this stuff. Like a baby doesn't believe in object permanence. A newborn baby thinks that it's the mother. Like a newborn baby has no sense of separation. It has to learn this stuff, right? It comes into creation, and it has to learn that one thing is different from another thing, that one self is different from another self, that objects apparently are permanent. You know, a baby is in a pure, naked, shunyata state. So, causes and effects. We insist that a cause and an effect are two different things, but it's not possible. A cause can never produce an effect if they're separate. So it's not that the effect and there's a whole language in Nagarjuna that I haven't read in a long time, so I'm a little bit rusty on this stuff. But there's a whole language based around that the mind conceptualizes differences between things that aren't really there. There's no real, like, when the light from the parking garage I'm in here reflects off of my form and goes into this camera right here and goes into your eyeball and produces something in your mind, right? We can say that. We can say, okay, there's the light right there. Here's my form right here. Here's the camera. And then, of course, there's all these digital bits going up in outer space and down through cables and all kinds of stuff. And then it emerges, right? And it produces this effect in your mind where you see me, right? Really, it's just a big field. It's a field, and things are empty. how to put it into so they exist. They exist. Things exist, and yet things are empty of their own existence. So soon as the mind tries to reify things and say, okay, this form is a separate thing, this is not true. And the emptiness is not that there's a real emptiness, like there's a real void, but really the conceptualizing is the part which is empty. It's an empty display, like a reflection of the moon in water, like a magician's play. It's an empty display. The things, the appearances and emptiness are unity. So anyway, we were talking about how that the mind withdraws from knowable objects. Now, if you realize that when we try to produce dualistic conceptualization of subject and object and whatnot, that these objects are really empty, the mind will withdraw from imputing them as really existing objects, and it will start to see them as like a dream. So then at that point, the mind is withdrawing from knowables. Where are we? When there is the cessation of the knowable and the flow of attention towards that which is not knowable, the Buddha, pure intelligence, then there is fulfillment and one goes beyond sorrow. Without the cessation of the knowable, one's attention cannot be finally turned away from the knowable. So cessation of the knowable. So there's different ways to arrive at that, right? To arrive at where our mind is no longer clinging to objects. There's different, there's yogic methods, but ultimately you have to understand it through knowledge. You have to understand the emptiness of phenomena. Mere awareness of the involvement of the jiva in this samsara is of no use. But if the Supreme Lord is known, the sorrow comes to an end. So if through an Advaita Vedanta method, you focus completely on the pure consciousness Shiva, you're no longer focusing on the knowable. However, to continue to go to your point, Satyam Gupta, the difference between Buddhists and Advaita Vedantis is that the Advaita Vedantins, in our opinion, they sort of give a reality to objects because they say that objects are Maya, right? Buddhists will say that objects are empty. So it's not that the object is a real illusion and it has to be overcome, and that you know what I mean? It's accepted as it is, which is dreamlike. So you're not seeking to get away from objects, but you're viewing them as mind, right? It's not like, oh, this is I've seen so many, like I had friends who got into Advaita through Sri Ramana Maharshi or whoever, and they started to reject their life, right? They ruined their relationships, they fucked up their family relationships and things like this, because of this Advaita non-dual extremism, where they view everything going on in the world as unreal. And this is what I want to fix. I want to give an enlightened understanding of things like relationships and things like, life and our dharma, our duties. I want to give an enlightened understanding to these things so you can abide within non-duality and still have exist in the world, and produce the best benefit for others as you do that. Rama asked, "Holy Sir, please describe the Lord." Vashishta replied, "The cosmic intelligence in which the universe, as it were, ceases to be is the Lord. In him, the subject-object relationship appears to have ceased as such. He is the void in which the universe appears to exist. In him even cosmic consciousness stands still like a mountain. Rama asked again, how can we realize the Lord and realize the unreality of the universe that we have come to regard as real? Vashishta answered, the Lord can be realized only if one is firmly established in the unreality of the universe, even as the blueness of the sky is unreal. Dualism presupposes unity, and non-dualism suggests dualism. Only when the creation is known to be utterly non-existent, the Lord is realized. Rama asked, holy sir, by what method is this known? And what should I know by which the knowable comes to an end? Vashishta replied, and we're gonna wrap it up in 5 minutes when we get to the hour mark, and I'll take some questions if you guys want to ask me. Vashishta replied, the wrong notion that this world is real has become deep-rooted on account of persistent wrong thinking. However, it can be removed that very day on which you resort to the company of holy men and to the study of the Holy Scripture. Of all these scriptures, this Maharamanayam is the best. What is found here is not found. What is found here is found elsewhere, and what is not found here is not found anywhere else. However, if one does not wish to study this, one is welcome to study any other scripture. There is no objection to this. When the wrong notion is dispelled and the truth realized, that realization so thoroughly saturates one that one thinks of it, speaks of it, rejoices in it, and teaches it to others. Such people are sometimes called Jivan Muktas and also Videha Muktas. Rama asked, Lord, what are the characteristics of Jivan Muktas, liberated while living, and Videha Muktas, liberated ones who have no body? Vashishta replied, he who while living in an apparently normal life experiences the whole world as emptiness is a Jivan Mukta. He is awake but enjoys the calmness of deep sleep. He is unaffected in the least by pleasure and pain. He is awake in deep sleep, and he is never awake to this world. His wisdom is unclouded by latent tendencies. He appears to be subject to likes, dislikes, and fear, but is in fact he is free as space. He is free from egotism and volition, and his intelligence is unattached, whether in action or inaction. None is afraid of him, and he is afraid of none. He becomes Videha Mukta when in due time the body is dropped. The Videha Mukta is, yet is not I nor the other. He is the sun that shines, Vishnu that protects all, Rudra that destroys all, Brahma that creates. He is space, the earth, water, and fire. He is in fact cosmic consciousness, that which is the very essence in all beings. All that which is in the past, the present, and the future, all indeed is he and he alone. You know, interesting, Thich Thich Nhat, that Vietnamese Buddhist monk that passed away a couple years ago, Thich Nhat Hanh, really famous Vietnamese Buddhist monk. He said when he was going into nirvana, when he was dying, he said, look for me in your breath, or something like that. He said, I will be there in the space of your breath and in the light and things like that. So he's talking about the same here, Videha Mukta, becoming Vishnu that protects all, Rudra that destroys all, Brahma that creates. He is space, the earth, water, and fire. He is in fact cosmic consciousness, that which is the very essence in all beings. All that which is in the past, present, and future, all indeed is he and he alone. Rama asked again, Lord, my perception is distorted. How can I attain to that state that you have indicated? Vashishta replied, what is known as liberation, O Rama, is indeed the absolute itself, which alone is. That which is perceived here as I, you, etc., only seems to be, for it has never been created. How can we say that Brahman has become all these worlds? O Rama, in ornaments I see only gold, in waves I see only water, in air I see only movement, in space I see only emptiness, in mirage I see only heat and not else. Similarly, I only see Brahman, the absolute, not the worlds. The perception of the worlds is beginningless ignorance, yet it will vanish with the help of inquiry into the truth. Only that ceases to be which has come into being. This world has never really come into being, yet it appears to be. The exposition of this truth is contained in this chapter on creation. When the previous cosmic dissolution took place, all that appeared to be before disappeared. Then the infinite alone remained. It was neither emptiness nor a form, neither sight nor the seen. And one could not say that it was nor it was not. It had no ears, eyes, tongue, and yet it hears, sees, and eats. It is uncaused and uncreated, and it is the cause of everything, as water is the cause of waves. This infinite and eternal light is in the heart of all, and it is the light, and it is in its light that the three worlds shine as a mirage. When the infinite vibrates, the worlds appear to emerge. When it does not vibrate, the worlds appear to submerge. And even when a firebrand is whirled as fast as a fiery circle appears, and when it is held steady, the circle vanishes. Vibrating or not vibrating, it is the same everywhere and at all times. Not realizing it, one is subject to delusion. When it is realized, all cravings and anxieties vanish. From it is time. From it is perception of the perceivable object, action, form, taste, smell, sound, touch, and thinking. All that you know it is it alone, and it is by that which you know all this. It is in the seer, sight, and seen, and the very seeing. When you know it, you realize yourself. In Buddhism, we would call that the Dharma Dhatu. Same thing, same ass thing. You know, you represent it by a mandala. What the fuck? It's the absolute reality is the absolute reality. So, again, if you guys have any questions, I will gladly take those. All right, Satyam Gupta says, how does Buddhism approach the hard problem of consciousness? Can you explain a little bit more? What do you mean by the hard problem of consciousness? How does Buddhism approach the hard problem of consciousness? All right, well, everybody's left. If you guys feel like throwing me a donation, I would much obliged. Here's my PayPal, esotericworldviews@gmail.com. Much appreciated. It's like the challenge of explaining why a physical state is conscious rather than non-conscious, and why we all have first-person conscious experience. So you're basically saying, like, what does Buddhism say about consciousness, because it believes everything's empty, right? Even Buddhists don't understand emptiness. Like, emptiness is a hugely misunderstood thing. The Buddhist cosmology of mind emerging from Brahma and creating all the sentient beings it's the same. That's what Buddhists you can take all of the Hindu. If you guys missed that, here is my PayPal if you'd like to shoot me a donation. Much obliged. esotericworldviews@gmail.com. esotericworldviews@gmail.com. Appreciate it. So Satyam Gupta is saying it's like the challenge of explaining. So emptiness is not nihilism. It took me a while to understand this, and it was something that I was kind of unattracted to Buddhism at first. At first in my path, I was into Advaita more than any. I wasn't really even interested in Buddhism until I got into Tantra and Mahayana Buddhism, and I understood what it was saying. Shunyata, it's saying that phenomena are without essence. They're not independent. There's no independent phenomena. One of the other important ways of understanding sunyata is by the doctrine of dependent origination, pratitut samutpada, right? So I'll give you an example. The pen is long. You say that this part of the pen is short, right? And this part of the pen is long. So here's the short part of the pen and the long part of the pen, right? We say that this short has an independent nature called short, and this long has an independent nature called long. But they're really defining one another, right? If I remove my finger, their shortness and their longness disappears. But when we add a definition, they're short and long. So the swarupa of short and long is not permanent. It's just a conception, right? And it depends on one another. When you define things, subject, object, short, long, your mind kind of conceptualizes this dependently generated difference or origination. Like short comes into being and long comes into being, but really there's no short and long outside of just conceptualizing it, right? Of course, it's not that short and long doesn't exist. Like it exists right there, but it's empty. There's no permanent short nature or long nature, and that's what emptiness means. It doesn't mean that things like emerge out of some black hole or something like that. Although there are black holes, you know what I mean, and there are that you could call like akasha, but we're not even don't think of it as like an essential thing. Like the emptiness is like an essential characteristic. It's characteristiclessness is what it is. It's the way of deconstructing, like the text says, the focusing on knowable objects. So a yogi who doesn't perceive subject object perceives the emptiness of subject and object. Does consciousness also emerge from dependent origination? Well, here, I'll give you my view about that, right? And this will go off into like my kind of Carl Jungian obsession, Carl Jung, right? So our sense of self, right? Let's forget about global consciousness, universal consciousness. We could talk about that, but let's talk about our consciousness, right? Our sense of self, of course, emerges from our father and our mother, right? A father and a mother unite, and our self emerges out of that, right? So our sense of self has this male, our psyche has this male and female characteristic. Jung called that the animus and the anima. And how psychologically healthy that we are during our lives is very much dependent on how that relationship that we have with our archetypes for male and female developed, right? If we had an abusive mother or an abusive father, our self is fucked up. So let's look at dependent origination in that sense, right? Our sense of self is our psychological well-being is very much dependent on our father and mother and our relationships that we have with them. So you can consider yourself, if you're a psychologically healthy, well-adjusted person, and that's how your sense of self is, like that's a permanent, that's your like identity, then that identity is dependent. It's dependently originated on the fact that the male and female, animus and anima archetype that birthed it loved you, right? That's dependent origination to me is very profound, And it's like the key Buddhist teaching, and you can elaborate it like this in a very profound way. But that's the main understand. That's how I understand, is that things arise dependently like this, and as such, it's like a thought, right? It's a thought doesn't, you can't tell where a thought begins, where a thought ends. A thought is not a static thing. It's mutable, it's changing, and it's evolving in this dependent way. But you can talk in a universal sense, consciousness. Yeah, I believe in the Vedic notion that you have like manus and things which emerge out of the sun. You know, the spiritual force of the sun is kind of gives birth to root beings and manus, and this branch of humanity emerges from for this epoch, this Manvantara. You have like a progenitor, like an Abraham kind of figure that gives rise to the solar. I believe that we all really emerged our human consciousness emerged out of the sun, and you have the different planets kind of influencing the way in which consciousness evolves. So I kind of lean towards theosophy if we want to bring it to like a planetary scale. But I think that if you're talking about the origin of consciousness itself, I think that basically consciousness doesn't it's never created. It's intrinsic in the non-dual primordial self. And so I kind maybe that's what you were trying to ask me, is like, okay, if things are dependently originated, does that preclude that God is dependently originated? No, there's two natures, right? Two truths: absolute truth and relative truth. Now, the relative truth is dependently originated. So like a human being dependently originated by the father and mother, but the absolute is never brought into existence. But it's not separate either. Like, and that's the unity of the two truths, and understanding the unity of the two truths is so crucial. So that's why that we have this anima and animus, and that's why that the qualities, that the archetypes of the divine are found in manifestation, is because the two truths are one. They're never separate from one another. What you have is just kind of like, right, like at the cosmic pralaya, right, at the end of the universe, everything is absorbed back into Parashiva, right? Just like when you fall asleep, your consciousness is absorbed back into Parashiva in deep sleep, in third state of consciousness, right? I think Pasyanti, I believe, is the name. So third state of consciousness. Every time we go to sleep, we're absorbed back into Parashiva, and then we emerge once more. And then when we emerge, what emerges, right? Our psyche, anima and animus, emerges. So likewise, the nature, the primordial, unchanging nature of consciousness, it emerges dependently, but it's never separate. It's like a prism shining through a light, like white light through a prism, right? Like the prism, the rainbow, different colors, they're different subtle bodies, are different elements and constituents of our form, our dhatus and our ayatanas, our senses and whatnot. Although they appear to be different, it's really just that one primordial white light emerging as this display, right? So, okay, last question. What's the significance of elaborate rituals in Vajrayana Buddhism? Oh, well, that's a good question. So basically, in Vajrayana, you're welcome, my friend. I hope I see you again. I'm gonna try to make more live streams. I'm gonna try to make more content for you guys. So please tune in, share me with your friends. I appreciate it. And of course, don't feel shy about supporting me, so I can continue to spend more time doing this and less time doing this shit. I would love to be able to spend more time with you guys and doing spirituality and less time, you know, working for somebody else. But anyway, so what's the purpose of the elaborate rituals within Vajrayana? So that's very, very profound. So all of the rituals in Vajrayana none of them take place in the material world, okay? So all of the rituals that we do in Vajrayana, they take place in the highest heaven, okay? So like Shiva creates all things with his mind, right? So basically the yogi becomes Shiva. So imagine that Shiva is in his heaven, right? In Akanishta, the highest heaven. Imagine that Shiva is there, right? Now, all of the rituals which he does, he can create the universe. He can cause effects. He can do anything that he wants with his liberated mind in his dimension, right? That's what the Vajrayana rituals are. The yogi goes and becomes Shiva, and then he influences the world in that dimension. So, of course, Vajrayana Buddhists, we're Mahayana Buddhists, so always the rituals that we do, we want those superpowers, right? But the difference between us and Shaivites is that we want the superpowers so that we can liberate other people. So you'll see a Vajrayana Buddhist will transform into Shiva, transform into Tara, transform into Avalokiteshvara, and then immediately we are visualizing lights emanating into all of samsara to heal the sentient beings, to bring them different types of effects, right? There's 4 types of basic tantric effects that we do for sentient beings: magnetizing, increasing, pacifying, and subjugating. So we have pacifying is like the Vajrasattva and Avalokiteshvara. So we want to pacify the dissonant mental states of sentient beings, right? So somebody who's really internalized themselves with these rituals, they can just be like, I do this all the time. Like, I'll be having a conversation with somebody internally, and I'm like trying to embody Avalokiteshvara, trying to embody Shiva, trying to influence every moment of my life and all of my relationships to transform them with my tantric powers, to calm their mental states, to liberate them, and to bring them into coming closer to enlightenment. So that's the purpose of the rituals in Vajrayana, and all of them have those effects. If you go and you read through the text and you look at what's going on, it's just a way that we map the absolute reality, and it's said that there's 2 stages of the rituals, right? Dissolution and generation. So basically you dissolve everything into Parashiva, into voidness, and then you recreate the absolute reality. You're recreating your new self. So just like after you die, your form dissolves, right? And then you regenerate yourself as a Buddha deity, in order to liberate sentient beings. So what do you think? After you die, what do? Do I continue to keep this form, right? No, this form is gone. So after I die, I want to recreate myself into a deity, into a deva form. That's what we're doing. We're getting used to what's going to happen in eternity. All right, everybody. Thank you. And I will see you again soon. Again, thank you all for chiming in. Om Mani Padme Hum. Through the power of our practice, respect, and praise, may all sentient beings benefit wherever they may be, causing sickness, violence, and poverty to subside, and may Dharma and good omens increase. Sarva Mangalam.